Ladies and gentlemen, a good evening to you. This is John Cameron Swayze reporting the news for the biggest car of the low price 3, Plymouth.
Plymouth, the car that's making news, presents the Plymouth News Caravan. The excitement, the drama of today's news today. Produced for Plymouth by NBC.
Well, the news this evening is filled with speculation about what's behind the sudden departure of a top military and civilian team for the Far East. The abrupt travel orders were made public without advance notice to newsmen. As reported now by David Brinkley at NBC News, Washington.
We were assured there was no crisis involved, but today the country's top military man and the Far East's expert from the State Department went flying out to Formosa for consultations, they said, about the tense situation. Admiral Arthur Radford, chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, and Walter Robertson, Assistant Secretary of State, went to Formosa together to Taipei to see Chiang Kai-shek. About precisely what they didn't say, but Radford did tell us this.
In view of the tense situation which continues in the area, Assistant Secretary of State Walter Robertson and I are today proceeding to Taipei for a further consultation under the treaty provisions referred to.
Admiral, is there anything new in this tense situation?
Not that I know of. Sir, could you expand any on this build-up that reportedly has taken place? I think the build-up is a methodical, determined one, and points out that the Communist Chinese have not deviated from their announced intentions to take Formosa by force if necessary.
Other military doings in Washington, a signal went out from the Pentagon at 6:30 tonight calling every member of the country's National Guard to report for duty, an exercise called Operation Minuteman. The word went out from this room across the country to about 350,000 guardsmen to turn out for duty.
Yes?
General, Operation Minuteman is now in effect.
Thank you. Gentlemen, Operation Minuteman is now in effect. This operation will extend throughout the United States and Alaska as a test alert of all Army and Air National Guard units. About 350,000 National Guardsmen will participate in this program. This is the first time in peacetime history that such a test alert of the Army and the Air National Guard has ever been staged. I would like to remind you again that this is merely a test.
Now for a look at what happened shortly after this order went out from the Pentagon, back to John Cameron Swayze in New York.
The word from headquarters in Washington produced quick action at National Guard stations from coast to coast, ready to prove their preparedness.
Here's how the alert hit the Air National Guard unit stationed at the Westchester County Airport north of New York City. Across the nation, it was expected that 1,000 Air National Guard planes would be scrambled. Some members of these units have been standing by for Operation Minuteman for months. Tonight, they were ordered to report immediately and be ready to fly on a moment's notice. As planes were sent aloft, guardsmen were manning their anti-aircraft batteries, and others were deployed around railway depots, radio and television stations, and airfields. In North Carolina, a division had orders to move out in darkness to protect against saboteurs assumed to have been parachuted in. In South Carolina, guardsmen were assigned to man the beaches against possible landings. This test operation was designed to find out how many of the 400,000 National Guardsmen in the nation will answer a sudden call to duty. These pictures, rushed to NBC's Midtown studios and developed within the hour, show the nation's civilian soldiers pitching in to make Operation Minuteman a success.
In New York, federal mediators are set to meet tomorrow morning with CIO electrical workers now striking the Sperry Corporation. Today, the walkout brought violence on Long Island.
Local 450 is on strike. Please respect our picket lines. Do not cross our picket lines. Our picket lines are illegal.
The pickets started lining up outside the Sperry plant at Lake Success at 5:30 this morning. There were some 2,000 of them around the main gate at the time the first shift was due to report for work. Here, at the former site of the United Nations, 2 policemen attempted to cope with the mass picket line and keep things peaceful. Cars were lined up for a quarter of a mile as the strikers blocked the main gate. At least 60 cars were damaged as non-union employees and supervisory personnel of Sperry tried to cross the picket lines. In one case, a small car was picked up with passengers and carried out to the road away from the gate. Some cars did manage to get through and looked almost lost in the huge but empty Sperry parking lot. The 2 Lake Success cops were armed with riot guns, but they were reluctant to use them for fear of provoking further violence. Requests for additional police went unheeded. One report said Nassau County refused to help, saying reinforcements weren't needed. Nassau's story is that it doesn't have jurisdiction over the village, which is home for Sperry, a leading maker of electronic gear for the Defense Department. 2 strikers were arrested, one for assault, the other for disorderly conduct. The union had an agreement with the company to allow security personnel access to the plant, but they were very firm in their actions and speech when the unorganized employees tried to pass their lines. In spite of all the shoving and pushing, the company says that some 3,000 people made it to the plant. Two strikers were injured in the wild melees, one with a broken arm, the other with a broken leg. One of the 2 policemen was injured when an auto ran over his foot. A worker who tried to pass the line made it, but in the excitement suffered a heart attack and died. Sperry says it expects more police on duty tomorrow when the strike enters its 3rd day.
Over in London, the formal election campaign hasn't started, but the Conservatives think they have a surefire vote winner locked up in the budget case.
Around the Smith Square residence of British Chancellor of the Exchequer R.A. Butler, newsmen waited to photograph the famous case in which the new budget traditionally is carried to Parliament. Inside it, all Britain expected a number of tax concessions. Only logical, they reasoned, with the new elections just around the corner, and the Conservatives naturally wanting to please the voting public. But the contents of the case, it turned out, went beyond some of the rosier dreams. When he unsnapped the lock before Parliament, Chancellor Butler announced sweeping tax concessions that cut basic rates, boost exemptions, and remove nearly 2.5 million people from the tax rolls altogether. Good news for the British public from the government that wants to stay in power.
In the film capital of the United States, names that date back to the days of silent pictures make news again today. And Roy Neal has the details at our newsroom in Los Angeles.
One of the film colony's oldest and most bitter court battles wound up a few hours ago with producer Samuel Goldwyn outbidding ex-actress Mary Pickford for control of the old United Artists studio lot. America's sweetheart of the silent screen, accompanied by husband Buddy Rogers at her right, opened with a $1.5 million bid for the 10-acre site. Goldwyn, represented by attorneys, finally won out with a bid of $1,920,000. But Miss Pickford left the courtroom with the consoling thought that she'll get 1 million of those past-due Goldwyn dollars. At the studio, changes are now in order. In place of this plaque, a small Mary Pickford Company sign, there will be erected a huge sign reading Samuel Goldwyn Studios. Meanwhile, production continues at the old United Artists lot. Now back to New York.
Just 2 games in the major leagues today, 1 in each league. In the American, Baltimore beat the Yankees 6-3, while over in the National, Milwaukee pounded Chicago 9-5. Washington, the House today passed and sent to the Senate a bill to give 500,000 postal workers pay boosts of 8.2% retroactive to the first day of March. This is more than President Eisenhower wanted. Augusta, Georgia. President Eisenhower has ended his 9-day golfing vacation at Augusta, which included work, of course, and returned to the capital. Meanwhile, in Louisville, Kentucky, Dr. Ross T. McIntyre, who was the personal physician to the late President Roosevelt, gave a boost to the Eisenhower practice of golfing. Here's the way he put it. He has to do something to relax, said the doctor. I don't know why there's all this criticism about playing golf. New Delhi, India. The Parliament of India today greased the skids to allow the nation to expropriate private property, in line with Nehru's plan to set up a socialist society there. They passed a constitutional amendment which now requires one signature to become official. Well, that's the story, folks. Glad we could get together. Remember to tune in the Camel News Caravan at this time tomorrow night, brought to you by Camel. No other cigarette is so rich-tasting, yet so mild, as Camel. And now, this is John Cameron Swayze saying good night for the all-new 55 Plymouth, the biggest car of the low-price 3.